Starting off at number 10 now, we have the Wyoming incident. According to internet legend, this was a broadcast hack that happened in 2008, affecting a number of communities in the town of Niobrara in Wyoming. Their regular news show was interrupted with this.
Preparation for the 2008 general election. Republican President Jackson.
Over the next 6 minutes or so, viewers were shown text messages and strange visuals with audio snippets playing over them. Every 10 to 15 seconds a message would appear announcing that this was a special presentation. The text would say things like, "You will see such pretty things," and "You are ill, we just want to fix you," and "What hides in your mind?" Now that last question was later answered with the chilling message of, "We have already seen it." What was even stranger was that people reported having a physical reaction to the footage. This included vomiting, hallucinations, and headaches. Others said that the frequencies played made viewers' eyeballs vibrate and create visual hallucinations. I'm glad we didn't show the whole clip then. Next up at number 9 now, we have Max Headroom. Now this is perhaps the most famous one on the list. Maybe some of you guys have seen it. On the evening of November 22nd, 1987, many people were enjoying an episode of Doctor Who on Chicago WTTW Channel 11. For those Who fans out there, the episode was Horror of Fang Rock. Anyway, the broadcast was interrupted by a signal intrusion. Suddenly, viewers saw an unknown person wearing a Max Headroom mask and sunglasses. Max Headroom was a TV character from a show in the mid-80s. The imposter hijacked the broadcast for 90 seconds in which he rambled about Coca-Cola, the TV series Clutch Cargo, and WGN anchor Chuck Swirsky. To be honest, even with subtitles, it's quite difficult to make out what's being said. At the time, an FCC engineer said that the perpetrators would face a maximum $10,000 fine, up to a year in prison, or both. It's been over 30 years since the event though, and the culprits have never been caught. Coming in at the number 8 spot now, we have Vrillon. This is a strange one from 1977. During a regular news show on Southern television, there was a broadcast interruption just after 5 PM on November 27th. After some static and visual warping, a voice made this announcement.
This is the voice of Vrillon, representative of the Ashtar Galactic Command, speaking to you.
That person, calling themselves Vrillon, claimed to be an alien commander from an intergalactic association. The disembodied voice spoke for about 6 minutes. The main message was a warning to all humans to put down our weapons of war and to enter a new age of Aquarius. Then, and only then, would we make it to the next level of evolution.
Suck your energy from you, the energy you call money, and we'll put it to evil areas, giving you worthless dross in return.
Moving on to number 7 now, we have Playboy. I'm sure I don't need to explain to you guys what Playboy is, and if I do, I probably shouldn't. Needless to say, its late night TV shows have been very popular for many, many years. It's one of those channels where you wouldn't expect to see much religious talk, shall we say. However, that's exactly what you would have seen if you tuned into the channel on September 6, 1987. Someone interrupted the broadcast that night and displayed a quote from the Bible. I wonder how that went down with the Playboy viewers. The Bible verses were taken from Exodus and Matthew and read, "Thus saith the Lord thy God, remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. Repent, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand." The white text and black background appeared during a movie that Playboy had on called Three Daughters, and a number of viewers phoned in to ask what was going on. Police were able to trace the signal though, and 3 years later, a man called Thomas Haney was identified as the culprit. Next up at number 6 now, we have the nuke. Okay, for this one, I want you guys to do a bit of imagining now. I want you to imagine you're just chilling at home, just watching a channel that's showing beautiful scenery, live, it's playing relaxing music, that sort of thing, and then you see this. Yeah, that looked a lot like a nuke, and people in Czechoslovakia thought so too when this appeared on a TV show called Panorama in June 2007. The show usually just showed scenic footage of the Czech countryside to attract tourists to Prague and the surrounding area. When the camera appeared to show a nuclear bomb exploding during its morning broadcast, all hell broke loose. Some people who lived in the area started trying to leave before the radiation spread. Others were contacting the government asking what to do. The government received so so many panic calls that they had to issue an official statement confirming that Prague had not been bombed. It turns out that the footage was created as a performance piece by a group called Zathoven. I'm sure their artistic message is appreciated by some people out there, but maybe not the ones who thought they were actually having to flee for their lives. Coming in at the number 5 spot now, guys, we have The Old Couple. This is a really strange one that occurred in July 2007 during regular broadcasting on ABC's affiliate channel WJLA. This image appeared on the screen. Now, to this day, nobody is exactly sure what this picture is of. Clearly, it's two faces. One of them is smiling and one of them looks quite concerned. The faces look like they've been computer generated. Now, to me, it looks like something out of a 90s video game. This creepy image stayed on the screen for several seconds with no sound before completely vanishing. Many people said there was a dark meaning to all of this, that this was no ordinary interruption. The cable company in charge of the broadcast said there was a programming mix-up from an advertisement for the Oprah Winfrey Show. That seemed to satisfy most people, but things took a turn when videos of the event were all removed from YouTube due to restricted access. To this day, I still couldn't find any clips of this on YouTube. All that has survived is this image and the questions that come with it. Coming at number 4 now, we have War of the Worlds. Have you guys ever seen the War of the Worlds movie with Tom Cruise? I really like that movie, I'm not gonna lie. But did you know where the title for that movie came from? In 1938, future filmmaking legend Orson Welles created a radio drama based on H.G. Wells' novel The War of the Worlds. It was made to sound like a genuine news broadcast about aliens from Mars invading Earth. If you guys were to hear it on the radio today, you might think, oh, this is obviously a piece of written drama, it's not real. Well, back in 1938, on the eve of World War II, it was a very different time. Many people listening to the broadcast missed the introduction where it clearly states that the following is a piece of radio drama, and they thought it was totally real. This is what they heard.
About 20 yards to my right. Ladies and gentlemen, due to circumstances beyond our control, we are unable to continue the broadcast from Grover's Mill.
Now, according to legend, some people were so convinced that America was being invaded by Martians that they fled their homes in a panic. In the following days, there was an outcry for broadcasters to be regulated to stop this thing kind of happening ever again. That failed, and the piece went down in history as one of the most famous pieces of radio drama ever, and possibly one of the greatest pranks of all time. Next up at number 3 now, we have Handy Manny. Some of our North American viewers may have grown up watching this kid show. The animated TV series follows Manny, a repairman with talking tools. It's fun, it's educational, they sing, you get the idea. Handy Manny is also famous though for a shocking broadcast interruption which occurred on May 1st, 2007. Viewers of the show in Lincroft, New Jersey had their episode interrupted by a clip from an adult movie. Yeah. Say no more. Many of the other interruptions we've talked about usually last for 10, 15, 30 seconds. The adult film clip on Handy Manny went on for several minutes. Naturally, people wanted an explanation. Thousands of kids must have seen this. Comcast was the network that was responsible for the intrusion, or at least they should have been the ones to stop it from happening. They didn't have an answer for why it happened, and over a decade on now, they still don't. Moving on to number 2 now, we have Mayday. On January 3rd, 2007, Channel 7 in Australia was airing a Canadian documentary called Mayday, which features cases of air disasters. At some point during the broadcast, things got strange. The visuals continued as normal, but the audio started repeating a single phrase on a loop. One quick-thinking YouTuber uploaded this video of the event. Many people think that the voice is that of a man from America's deep south saying the phrase, "Jesus Christ, help us all, Lord." See what you think.
Jesus Christ, help us all, Lord. Jesus Christ, help us all, Lord. Jesus Christ, help us all, Lord.
That went on for an astonishing 6 minutes before everything returned to normal. Many people wanted answers, but Channel 7 were very evasive. They denied that there had been an intrusion, but also disputed what the clip was actually saying. They claimed the voice said, "Jesus Christ, one of the Nazarenes." The fact that so many people disagree with that has only added fuel to the fire that something very strange happened that day. And finally, number 1 now, we have Coast to Coast AM. That's the name of this talk show run by Art Bell. He was used to to strange calls on his show, but things got even stranger on September 12, 1997. That night, Art got a call from a guy who claimed to have been an employee at the mysterious Area 51 base, where conspiracy theorists say the US Air Force contained and studied aliens and their crashed spacecraft. The caller sounded terrified and claimed that they were coming for him and that he didn't have much time to share with the world what he knew about Area 51. He talked about extra-dimensional beings who are not what they appear to be, that they have infiltrated the US military and are now taking over.
Okay, what we're thinking of as aliens are they're extra-dimensional beings.
The caller began to sound more erratic and panicked. Finally, he started talking about how governments are trying to get human populations down to a manageable number so that they're easier to control. Just after this, the line went dead when the power cut out at the station. By the time they got the backup generators running, the caller was gone. Conspiracy theorists say that it was more than a coincidence that the caller was cut off and never heard from again just when he began to spill the beans on secret government activity. What do you guys think?
At number 10, we have an octopus nursery. 8-legged alien looking things with suction cups all over their arms and beaks for mouths. Octopus are creepy looking things, and to top it all off, they can camouflage like a Navy SEAL, and they are super smart. If these are the kind of things that make your skin crawl, then just running into one of these guys would probably freak you out. Well, on the underwater expedition at the Davidson Seamount, there was a rather shocking discovery. They had a remote probe that was on the ocean floor around 10,000 feet, and they came across which seemed to be an octopus that was next to not just one, not just two, but a group of 1,000 octopuses in a nursery. They were all there laying their eggs and using the heat from the volcanic vent to keep them warm. I would hate to be the guy who accidentally steps into that crack and then gets devoured by thousands of sticky arms. But if you're at 10,000 feet underwater, you probably are already screwed. At number 9, we have the Siberian lake monster. Of course, if we're doing a list of scary things that live underwater, we have to throw a giant mysterious sea monster on here. What separates the Siberian lake monster from other more popular guys that we have seen like Loch Ness and that kind of stuff is that underwater scans have actually picked this guy up. This thing is deep in Lake Labinkur, and some radar has shown that it looks like a 33-foot long creature is living there. Now this is probably just a skeleton, but if this thing is dead, it means that there was once a giant man-eating monster in this lake. I thought we were supposed to be safe in freshwater. They've nicknamed this thing the Devil, so you know he's a good time and loves company. So next time you go up to the cottage and you're swimming in the water and you feel safe, remember there might be a giant monster lurking underneath the water ready to turn you into a side dish. At number 8, we have the blue hole. Now there are several blue holes in the world. There's one in Belize, there's one in the Red Sea, there's a giant one in my heart that was left there from when Reboot ended on a cliffhanger. How are you going to end a show that so many people fell in love with on a cliffhanger? I will never trust again. Well, this one is between Cape Verde and the Caribbean islands. Scientists are really confused about this thing. It's a crack in the bottom of the ocean floor and it's several thousand miles long. What's strange about this is there's no explanation of how this happened. It might have been tectonic plates moving around, but when this happened, the Earth will probably start to repair itself and there's been no sign of this. My theory is this is where Godzilla goes to sleep at night. I mean, it seems like the most logical answer. It's either that or the gateway to hell. Like, come on guys, I'm doing real science work here. At number 7, we have the Yonaguni Complex. This was discovered by scuba divers in the 1980s. I think that's the scariest part about this one. Could you imagine going scuba diving back in the 80s? The technology back then must have been a tube going up to some guy who would blast fresh air down to you using a bicycle pump. I don't even think they had decompression sickness figured out back then. The chances of you coming up the bends was probably super high. Well, if it wasn't for a few divers in Japan who were willing to sacrifice it all to look at some cool stuff, we wouldn't know anything about the Yonaguni Complex. It's still a mystery as to what this thing is. It looks like some temples that might have existed thousands of years ago, but when the ice age decided to melt, it would have covered this entire area. This could be why an entire civilization got plunged underwater. Or the temple could have been on a cliff, and then when a massive earthquake hit, it knocked the temple into the water. But like everything in life, there are some haters who say this whole thing is just a natural rock formation. Some people just want to ruin everything. At number 6, we have Anacortes Sister Twista. One of the reasons why the underwater world is such a mystery is because we find things like this in there. Sure, there are beautiful things down there like bright fish and chubby marine mammals, but there's also the unknown, unidentified organisms like Anacorra Sister Twista, which should be the name of an 80s hair metal band. But what is this thing? Well, it's a protist. And what is a protist, you may ask? Well, it's an organism that doesn't belong to any animal group, fungus, or plant group. What does that mean? I really have no idea, you guys. I think it means it could be an alien. Some alien came down to Earth for a swim and then scraped its knee on some coral, and now we have alien creatures running around the ocean, probably waiting for you to pee so it can swim up your pee hole and then work its way into your brain. It's really the only logical answer. At number 5, we have the Bimini Road. How were the pyramids made? Was it aliens coming down to share their technology and secrets with us, or was it just thousands upon thousands of slaves who sacrificed their lives and their spines to build them? Well, we don't know and we may never know, but the Bimini Road is another one of these mysteries. It's off the coast of the Bahamas, and it looks like it could have been a pathway that was placed perfectly with giant slabs of rock. Similar to the way the pyramids were made, it seems that these large slabs of rock were too large to be moved by man, and also like the pyramids, these giant slabs were also perfectly placed so well. So where does everyone's mind go when something like this happens? Well, magic or aliens. The logical answer is that this is a natural phenomenon of the water moving and hitting the rocks to make these formations, but people think that this was made using advanced technology from aliens and could have been the road to Atlantis. Honestly, I like the Atlantis theory much better. It's more fun. At number 4, we have colossal squid. Yeah, this thing is a big no thanks for me. So everyone always talks about how there might be sea monsters out there, but this thing actually exists. There's never been one caught alive, but several have washed onto shores dead, and they are massive. The largest one ever discovered was 45 feet long, and it was dead. So you know there was an even bigger one out there that killed this guy. They don't even have suckers on their tentacles, they have hooks. Let me say that again. This squid has 10 giant arms covered in hooks. This thing is straight out of a horror movie. Scientists aren't even sure what something this big eats. They think it probably feeds on whales or your deepest, darkest fears. I wouldn't be surprised if the colossal squid works part-time as a gatekeeper for hell. It makes me think that the old Greek stories about the Kraken might have been real. At number 3, we have underwater circles. Giant formations of circles that are formed underwater and nobody knows how they got there. These mysteries were discovered off the coast of North Carolina, Florida, and Belize. Now, what are they? Like many things on this list, myself and the entire scientific community have no idea. But here are some theories. Maybe they were formed naturally by either two things, water currents or some sort of animal mating ritual. Another idea is that these things were made by ancient civilizations before the Ice Age. All these things would have been above ground and might have been art left over by some old-timey tribes. And the third theory is that they look kind of like a bullseye, so it might be some sort of nuclear missile target, and if you hit it hard enough, the explosion will cause some sort of major natural disaster like an earthquake or tsunami. Or if we're lucky, both. At number 2, we have Megalodon. If you have a fear of sharks, you're gonna love this one. Megalodon was a prehistoric shark that was even bigger than the giant hooked tentacle beast that was earlier on this list. If you've already forgotten about the colossal squid, it clocked in at around 45 feet long, where Megalodon was closer to 60 feet long. It was a 60-foot shark that could probably rip a blue whale in half in one bite. Well, maybe not that, but it was still a gargantuan creature with teeth the size of Brock Lesnar's fists. This thing wouldn't even chew you, it would just swallow you whole and then fart your skeleton out into the dark, cold ocean. At number 1 on our list, we have Giant Eyeball. A mysterious giant eyeball washed onto the shore of a Florida beach back in October of 2012. I don't know any other kind of giant eyeball other than a mysterious one. There's no super common regular giant eyeball just lying around. But this is also Florida. This is the state where people smoke crack at weddings and kiss alligators on the lips, so maybe it's a little more common over there. Well, this giant eyeball was found by Gino Cavacci, and he didn't know what the hell to make of it, so he took it home and then stuck it in his freezer. Then he called the cops, and the cops came in and told him, "We don't do giant eyeballs on the beach. You have to call the wildlife people." And then he called the wildlife people, and they were like, "What the hell is that?" And he was like, "I don't know. I brought it to you guys to try and figure out what it is." And then some people were like, "Maybe it's a sea monster," and other people were like, "No, it's probably from a marlin." And I think in the end, no one really knew what the hell it was. us. But just so you know, there's giant eyeballs out there just laying around the beach sometimes.
Starting off at number 10, we have the hallucination. So when the show began, the character Snuffleupagus was a figment of Big Bird's imagination. Snuffleupagus, or Snuffy, is a weird mammoth-looking creature covered in shaggy brown hair. Now, only Big Bird was able to see Snuffy, and people classified him as having schizophrenia. But then, eventually, other characters on the show began to see him too. Well, people believe that all the members in this town are experiencing a mass hallucination. It's some sort of weird plague that just has spread around the town, and now everyone is delusional and can see Snuffy. Poor Snuffy, I bet he just wants some friends. But honestly, the old version of Snuffy looks terrifying. I think he's supposed to be a mammoth, but he definitely doesn't look like one. Moving on, at number 9, we have Mr. Noodle. And I don't mean the packages of ramen noodles. So Mr. Noodle is shown to live outside a window at Elmo's house. Now, why does he live there? Seriously, out of all the places, he's living in some weird realm close to headache-inducing Elmo. Well, turns out that Mr. Noodle is trapped in a version of hell. Elmo then forces him to do whatever he says or else he'll face the consequences. But no matter what, Mr. Noodle will never escape and he will spend eternity being tortured by Elmo. Mr. Noodle is not allowed to talk either, he just has to nod, wave, and do as he's told. Elmo makes him do things like dance and do tasks for his own personal entertainment. The tasks always end up with Mr. Noodle completely embarrassing himself, but Elmo loves it. Poor Mr. Noodle, he's stuck listening to Elmo's squeaky voice for eternity. In our 8th spot, we have the Count. Now, the Count is far from the Twilight heartthrob vampires. He's this creepy purple puppet that is constantly teaching children how to count. Why does he do that? Well, people believe that he tricks these kids into playing his counting game, and then afterwards he feasts on them. This is why we're constantly seeing new kids in each episode. Each kid falls for the same trap. They play with the Count thinking that he's friendly and funny, the next thing you know, they're his dinner. But the Count only likes to target young children. Why is that? Well, it's because kids are easier to fool. To ensure that he is not stopped, he put a spell on all the adults. That way they can't save the kids. Moving on, at number 7, we have the entrance to Sesame Street. So this next theory states that Sesame Street is a real place that children can go. However, there's just one catch. Once you find the opening, you can no longer escape. So they say that the clue to finding Sesame Street is all in the opening theme song. So if you listen to the song lyrics, it starts with sunny days. So in order to get there, it has to be sunny outside. Then the song says, while sweeping the clouds away. People think this means you have to carry a broom as identification to get in. Seriously, a broom? Continuing on, the song says, come and play. People think this means you need to be at a nearby playground. And then you have to say out loud, can you tell me how to get to Sesame Street? Oscar will appear in a nearby trash can and you have to give him the secret password, which is everything's A-OK. Now, this seems all too elaborate, but if any of you try it and meet Big Bird, then let me know. Although, that may be hard because as soon as you enter, you can't exit. Coming up next at number 6, Sesame Street is based on a true story. What? How are these puppet creatures based on a true story? Well, let me explain. So each character in Sesame Street is said to be a person in real life. Oscar the Grouch is a homeless man. Bert and Ernie are typical roommates struggling to pay rent and get by. Cookie Monster is a drug addict that constantly needs his fix. And lastly, Elmo is an orphan who only has a goldfish and crayons as his belongings. We are now at our halfway mark with Oscar the Hoarder. Now, it's quite unusual that Oscar the Grouch lives in a trash can. Well, turns out that he is a compulsive hoarder. This theory believes that Oscar once started off as just someone who would rummage through garbage and keep what he found. He would do this constantly and the amount of stuff in his apartment became overwhelming. He also never wanted to leave his home. He had a lot of financial issues from not being able to work and ended up being kicked out of his home. The only other place out there for him that gave him comfort was the garbage can, so that's where he decided to live. It's also a place for him to get more trash since people will throw it right to him. Now, fun fact, Oscar was originally orange. Hard to believe it, but he was. So people theorize that he's still orange, but the color is hidden by layers of slime and dirt from him not washing. Coming in at number 4, we have Demon Elmo. Now, Elmo can be fairly annoying. His high-pitched voice and laugh can definitely get on people's nerves. Well, what if that's the point? People theorize that this creature is a demon. First off, he is red. the color associated with the devil. And secondly, he is targeted towards children. So he befriends young children, makes them feel safe, and then he harms and tortures them. Just like the thing with Mr. Noodle. He literally has trapped Mr. Noodle in a hell-like prison, making Elmo the devil. He tortures Mr. Noodle and other individuals constantly. The whole happy and child-friendly behavior is all just a persona. He actually has a much darker agenda. In our third spot, we have the drug problem. Now, people say that Sesame Street was once a really run-down and drug-infested area. The streets were dirty and tons of people had terrible drug addictions. Eventually, the streets were cleaned up. However, Oscar the Grouch was never able to move on from this. Oscar is said to be a huge drug addict. He lives in the garbage can with hopes that someone will discard a needle or anything that he can use to get his fix. Oscar was forced to just go cold turkey when the streets were cleaned up. That is why he may appear to have an attitude problem. It's because he is currently suffering through withdrawal. Man, I feel so bad for poor old Oscar. He literally can't catch a break out here. At number 2, we have Elmo's regressive behavior. Basically, this theory surrounds the fact that Elmo is stuck in a state of regression. So, Freudian psychology refers to regression as going back to an earlier stage in life. People think that this is why Elmo is stuck acting and behaving like a child. They believe that Elmo is actually older, yet he is stuck in this child mindset as it's a safe space for him. He is seen whining, using baby talk, and doing childlike activities. To support this theory, Elmo is constantly asking Mr. Noodle to show him how to complete a task like washing his hands. Elmo should be able to do that independently by now. Then he also always points out his crayons and his fish. Those are his comfort items that help him stay connected to this child state. Now, this theory also believes that Elmo is currently seeking treatment for it. In fact, Mr. Noodle is his doctor. Every time he opens the window, he sees Mr. Noodle. And, well, that's because Mr. Noodles is outside of Elmo's room monitoring his behavior. But for now, seems like Elmo is trapped in this state. And in our number 1 spot, we have the fact that Sesame Street is a psychiatric facility. Now, this is the most popular theory out there for many reasons. People are convinced that each character in Sesame Street are actually patients of a facility called Sesame Street. So let's break down some of the characters and what they're diagnosed with. Telly the monster is said to have an anxiety disorder. Telly is constantly worrying and can't focus on the task at hand. Then you have Count, who is said to have OCD. This would explain why he is continuously counting. In fact, his OCD is so severe that it prevents him from doing everyday tasks like answering the phone. In one episode, Count refuses to answer the phone because he wanted to count the rings. That shows how strong his impulses are. His OCD even prevents him from having a job. In the episode where Count gets a job as an elevator operator, he refused to stop at any floor but the 10th. That's because he felt the impulse to always count to 10. This is also why we see him locked away in his castle. He can't function in the outside world. Moving on, people believe that Cookie Monster suffers from an eating disorder. Throughout the show, you can see that Cookie Monster turns to binge eating as one of his coping strategies. And then lastly, you have Oscar the Grouch that suffers from oppositional defiant disorder. Now, argumentative and vindictive behavior and irritability are all considered part of this disorder. That literally perfectly summarizes up Oscar. There are so many other characters that are said to suffer from other disorders to prove this theory.